Hi everybody, my name is Marcos Cassiano, and I'm here to tell you about some of my tales from the road, some of my adventures traveling the highways and byways of the US and Canada, but never Mexico. Okay, this next tale actually has to do with how I ended up in Huntsville, Alabama. I lived there for a few years, and well, actually, I lived there for about 20 years, if not more. I moved from Nashville to Huntsville, and this is basically how it happened. I was playing with a guy named Steve Bess, and Steve had he was an older guy. I mean, like he was like I think almost 15 years older than I was, so he'd been around the block. He had played with Ray Price, famous country singer, when he was younger. And after that, over the years, Steve put a band together called the Gators. I don't know how many years they were together. After that band kind of disbanded, Steve went out and did his own thing, and he called his show the Steve Best Show. Okay? And so, because, like I said, Steve had a lot more experience, he, I guess, in the meantime, made a lot of contacts. He became like a booking agent also. So he books us in this club in Huntsville, Alabama. I believe this is 1979 now. It was called the Hourglass. Now, in Huntsville, there was a lot of house gigs there. So all the bands, they didn't have to travel. They just were, they were like house gigs, or we call it sit-down gigs. And about every year, some of the bands would take off, and they would get a replacement band, usually a local band or whatever. But this time, Steve happened to know when the band at the Hourglass was going to take their break, and so we got in there and we played. I think we played 1 week, and I think, God, it seemed like it was like in May, around 1979, maybe 80. And then it wasn't too long after that, Steve got us another gig in Huntsville, filling in at the Huntsville Hilton. The house band there was a guy named Rudy Maccabee. Now Rudy was kind of like a local celebrity. He had sang with the Drifters and other people like that. So he was very popular in Huntsville. So we filled in for him, and I think I got to meet him and his bass player on the first time we were there, and got to know them a little bit. I think fast forward, it seemed like maybe about a year later, we go back to the Huntsville Hilton. Now this is like May, I believe, 1980. Yeah. And what happened was the Hilton was doing such a booming business because it attracted a lot of businesses from out of town to do business in Huntsville, because it's the Space and Rocket Center. And so they were adding an addition onto the Hilton. It was like 4 stories. I don't know how many rooms. I didn't keep track. But the general manager of the Hilton, he liked music a lot. So he got the brilliant idea, like, hey, while we're going to renovate the Hilton on the other side, I'm going to build a bigger nightclub, because the original club at the Hilton was a small lounge called the Pepper Tree Lounge. It was small, it was intimate, but it was a lot of fun playing there. It was a lot of fun. So in the meantime, what the general manager of the Hilton wanted to do was, he wanted to pull Rudy out for a couple of weeks, because it was like, okay, in 2 weeks it looks like they're going to be done with the new lounge, so everything's going to be okay with the new part, because they're going to open up a new lounge. It was like twice as big, and it was going to be called Fleet Street. But he wanted to have a grand opening, so his idea was that I'm going to pull Rudy out for a couple of weeks. Then when he comes back, we're going to have like a lot of fanfare, a lot of this is going to go on. Yeah, it's going to be big, and it was big. I remember the opening. The opening was actually pretty big, and I remember I went to it. But anyways, back to the story. Was what happened was 2 weeks go by, the Fleet Street is not ready, the other side of the hotel is not ready. 3 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by. So it seems like, wow, there's like a delay here and a delay there. So in the meantime, what happened with that delay was, of course, Rudy was out of work, but he was the house gig there, so he wasn't too worried about it. And as a matter of fact, at this time, his band started rehearsing at the Hilton in one of the rooms, one of the hotel rooms. They like took the bed out, and I remember passing by there, and I could see that the band was into rehearsing. And this is kind of how I got to know the guys in the band, because they were hanging out at the Hilton. I would see them during the day rehearsing. So again, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and still a delay, still a delay, still a delay. By now, it's getting close to September now. Now, what happened in the meantime from May to about September was Steve, who was, he had a good personality. He was likable. And what happened was the general manager of the Hilton and Steve, they got along real well. And so the general manager came up with this idea. Hey, we're bringing you in, and you and Rudy, you'll split the time. Like Rudy will play 6 months, and you'll play 6 months. But it wouldn't be 6 months at a time. It would be like, one band would play maybe a month or two, and then you would leave, and the other band would come in. But Rudy wasn't having that. He didn't agree to that. So, as a result, there was some friction between Rudy and the manager of the Hilton. So Rudy ended up kind of leaving. Well, he actually did leave, but Rudy had, for some reason, a contract that he would open up Fleet Street, and he would play there for like 6 weeks. So basically what happened now, when September comes, the hotel's ready, and Rudy comes back. I remember he was dressed in a white tux, and his big thing was, he did a 50s show. His band would come out, play a set, then he'd do a 90-minute show of 50s music, So I remember, after that 6 weeks, Rudy left, and we ended up taking his house gig, but I don't think Rudy was too worried about it because, again, he was like a local celebrity. So he went down the street, I remember, and, he got a gig like right away, and he was playing every night again. The only thing was, he went to a place that wasn't all that nice. I remember, I think I went in there one time to talk to Rudy or somebody in the band, and it was kind of like just a dark, dingy. It was just like like a dark, dingy club. With Hilton was like this brand new place. It was exciting. Everybody was hanging out there. So that's basically how we got the gig, was because, Steve got to talking to the manager. The manager really liked us a lot, and over that time, we just ended up taking his gig. Now, the thing I liked about the gig was a lot of other bands or celebrities would come through Huntsville. They would stay at the hotel, and they'd play because they had an arena across the street called the Von Braun Civic Center. So I actually got to meet a lot of the people that would play over there, because they would come out to the club when they were done playing, and they would come in, and a lot of times we'd let them sit in, because at the time, Steve, I don't know if I mentioned, he also played drums. He was the drummer for the Gators. So what happened was, at Fleet Street we had a bigger stage, so Steve would set up his drum set. I mean, it was an old drum set, I mean, he had it probably since the 50s when he was playing with Ray Price, and he never updated it. So he had his dilapidated drum set on the stage, and my nearly brand new Yamaha 9000 series drum set. It sounded great, and Steve's 1950 Slingerland kit that, it didn't sound very good. So a lot of times people would come by. Like I remember, for instance, some of the drummers that sat in, Ronnie Millsap's drummer sat in with us, but I wasn't going to let him play Steve's set. So what would happen is I'd let the other drummers play my kit, and I would suffer through and play Steve. So I remember, like I said, Ronnie Millsap's drummer came through. Mark Herndon from Alabama came through. He played drums. Another guy that played drums that surprised me was Johnny Lee. Came in the club one night, and I forget who he was the opening act for. But Johnny, he didn't want to sing. We asked him if he wanted to sing because he had that big song, Looking for Love, because the Urban Cowboy had come out, and it was real popular. And by this time we were doing a little bit more country. We had added more country because of that movie. Some country music was like a little more acceptable. So Johnny Lee actually came in and played drums. But because he didn't act like he wanted to do anything, I just stayed on my kit, and eventually he got on Steve's kit, and he suffered through playing a couple of songs. So I got to play with several people like that, and I got to meet people. I remember one drummer I got to meet and I got to talk to was one time the Kool and the Gang came through town, and the Barkays were opening up for him. And somehow I met the drummer for the Barkays, and I said, wow, man, you guys are lucky. You only have to go out there, because they were the open act, you only have to go out there and play 30 minutes, and I'm here all night long. And he goes, yeah, but sometimes I wish I could play longer, because he says 30 minutes go by fast, you're all warmed up, and then you're done. So, I got to, like I said, meet and talk to people like that. And then I also remember Another act that came through when we were still at the Pepper Tree, the old one, was Charlie Daniels came through town, and Pure Prairie League was the opening act. So when they got done, they came in the club, and at that time, Vince Gill was now the guitar player for Pure Prairie League. So Vince Gill gets up on the guitar, and Taz Gregoria, who was Charlie Daniels' keyboard player, he came up and he played keyboard. So it was always a lot of fun because these kind of things would happen while we were playing there at the Hilton. It was just fun. The gig lasted about 3 years with Steve, but I only stayed 2 years. Maybe I'll get into it later why I left and where I ended up. But again, Huntsville was a mecca for house gigs, and again from the Hilton, I went out to the airport. Then I went out to another hotel, the Sheraton Inn, and I branched out a little bit. I remember I went to Muscle Shoals, worked there for like 3 months. So it was a good experience. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun playing every night because I felt like that, one, it improved my playing. It built up my endurance because prior to that, I would go out and play for a week or two with the band, come home, off a week, go out for 2 weeks, off a week. That was kind of the norm. But now it's like every week, every week, every week, every week. We basically, I think the whole time we were there, the whole time I was there, we only took one break from the Hilton. Steve booked another one of his acts in there, and we went off and did something else for a week. So again, it was fun. Again, all good things come to an end, but in retrospect, it was fun. It was a good gig, and more later. Bye-bye.